Well, welcome to finals day here at the European Championships for 49er class. Beautiful conditions, the sea breeze is now in, and I think we're in for a good afternoon's racing. First up, we'll have the Petite Final for women. That'll be one race, and the winner of that race does get invited into the main medal races. 3 races for women will be the final double points. Following that, the Petite Final for men, which will be one race. And again, the winner goes through for the main final, at which will be 3 races. Marcus Bauer, Andy Rice, couldn't be better scripted than what we can see out there at the moment.
No,
I go. Andy, go to you first.
Well, I would like to see a little bit more win than we have, but we've got enough to get racing off. We've waited a little bit more, a little bit longer than we would like to have done this morning, but racing can carry on up until 6 o'clock this evening. So hopefully race officer David Campbell-James will be able to fit all the races in today.
Yes, and Marcus, a slightly different format. Just walk us through the format. I can see we've got course boundaries and a very short, compact course.
Yeah, the course is a so-called theater-style course. We're racing inside boundaries. The course is limited on the left and right side. That's these orange buyos that we will see in a minute. We can actually see them at the bottom of the screen right now. And the boats are starting as usual, short starting line. We can see the leeward gate. They're just passing that, going up to the windward gate, going around it, back down to the leeward gate, back up to the windward gate and down to the finish. And this race is about qualifying one boat, one extra boat for the finals, which are happening right after that. It's called the Petit Final. And yeah, it's about winning this race for those boats which placed in the qualifiers between 9th and 16th place. They get the chance to make it to the final in this last Petit Final.
So we're just coming up to 30 seconds to go. Andy, you can have the honours of calling in the first race of the final.
The boats are lining up and it's very, very light. I see one British boat coming in from the pin end of the line. Will they cross behind the rest of the fleet? I would suspect they're going to tack and try and get that pin end of the line. The last few seconds, the British boat going behind the other boats, so hoping to get something on the right-hand side, coming towards the shore side on the commentary position. And we just heard from David Campbell-James, start was clear.
Still quite light conditions as they go off the line. The boats are not able to sail outside the, you can see the orange marker buoys. That it's almost like sailing inside a court of play, Marcus, like a football field.
Yeah, I like the analogy of a football field. There's boundaries, they're not allowed to go outside them. It's a confined playing field that they need to work with, and it makes it much easier to watch. And a little bit more difficult to sail in.
Danish boat that got the pin end. It looks like they've made a very good start on the right-hand side of the track. The first boat to tack, and because there's a boundary there, they can call for water to tack. So they are allowed to call for water, but having said that, they still completed their tack and have to duck some of the other boats still on starboard tack. So there's going to be a lot of tacking up the course, a lot of driving down the course, much more so than we would normally see.
So the sailors, Andy, treat that restricted area almost like treating it like a breakwater or the obstruction.
And it's just 400-meter long course, and we were told that it might be 200 meters wide, but it doesn't even look 200 meters wide to me. So it's going to be very confined racing and a lot of maneuvering, and the skill will come in the speed of your maneuvers and also the positioning relative to the other boats around you. Wind shifts may be not as significant on this kind of course as you would expect on a larger course.
I think we're going to see some very aggressive sailing in these Petit Finals, because it's all about winning that one race, and boats are going to try anything they can to win. So it will be more aggressive than usual. It's not about conservative sailing. It's purely about winning.
And coming towards this side of the course, Victoria Hjortzog doing extremely well, and it would be a great story if she got back into the race and got back into the final later on this afternoon, wouldn't it, Peter? We spoke to Victoria earlier today, and she's been unfortunate earlier on in the week.
Yes, she had rather a nasty accident, and she's got an injury to her foot, but it didn't seem to be affecting her pre-race mental state. She was looking forward to the opportunity of trying to get through to the final. So we've got the German team in that windward position right up under the boundary mark, 712. They would be the boat in the lead at the moment.
On the far side, it's a Danish boat sailed by the Schut sisters, also fighting for this one place back into the final. There we are looking at one of the other German boats. I didn't see which one that was.
Looks like a bit.
That was Leonie Meyer and Marin Halbrock, and they are just crossing on starboard. And it looks like they have very good position on the right-hand side.
Just a slight error there by Victoria Yorksock.
There goes Myron Halbrook in first place, hoisting the Jenica, first to go round. So it's a German 1-2. That's Yortzok and Lorenz going round in second. American boat, Anna Tunnicliffe and Molly Vandermeer. Anna Tunnicliffe, a 2008 Olympic champion, going straight into a jibe set with the red Jenica. Next round, Danish boat, the Schutter sisters, Macon and Anna Yuli. Then a British boat, Francis Peters and Nicola Groves just missed out on making the cut for the top 8 yesterday, so they have the fewest points going into this competition.
Light conditions, wind speed out there only around 6 knots. We can see the boats on both sides of the course sailing right to the extreme of the boundary. The boat in the lead on the far side, with the black spinnaker going right over to the boundary mark, then they will jibe and come back towards the centre. Certainly the stadium racing, Marcus, it forces boats back together. What's the analytics telling us at the moment after the first lap?
Well, it looks like it's Meyer on the seaside of the course, but it looks like Victoria Yortzok, the other German boat, doing very well on starboard tack as they converge. But the boat that went round in first, Leonie Meyer and Marin Holbrook, manages to just get ahead on port jibe, on the unfavoured jibe, but they got it clear ahead of their German compatriots, so they remain in the lead, and it looks like they can carry this port hand jibe all the way down to the leeward gate. Remember, this is a very short course, 400 metres, possibly even less than that. On the near-sided picture on the left-hand side, we see Anna Tunnicliffe going very, very fast, with the best speed on the course, and as Annie Tunnicliffe is about to jibe in towards the bottom marks, this looks like she might have made a gain on the German boats on the other side of the course.
Certainly a
nice jibe by Anna Tunnicliffe there.
A little bit more pressure on this side and a nice lane, but first round will be Leonie Meyer from Germany, followed by, I think it's going to be Yorksock second into that bottom mark gate.
Jibe drop by Anna Tunnicliffe going round in third place, right on the heels of Victoria Yortzok, coming up the shore side of the course. The Danish sisters going out to the left-hand side, Francis Peters and Nicola Groves going round to the right, followed by another German boat, the Gerger sisters, Jule and Lotte. Nice tack there. This is Victoria Yortzok and Annika Lorenz. Seems like Yortzok is not affected by the bad injury that she had to one of her legs a couple of days ago in a bad capsize.
But as we saw in the racing yesterday afternoon, I mean, this is compressed, but I still think there is more wind on the far side of the course, further away from the land. And 712, we've got Victoria Yorksock, but on the far side, Leonie Meyer, to me, Marcus, looks in quite a nice, strong position. She's going to have to tack shortly as she rolls into the tack on the far side, this next cross coming up.
Well, the tracking is telling a slightly different story. It looks like Victoria Yotzok is catching up, but we'll see for ourselves in a second as they're converging now. We can see the two leading boats coming into picture here. On top of the screen on the right-hand side is Victoria Yotzok crossing over, Leonie Meyer on the other side. Intense battle for this one spot to make it to the final. And it does look like Victoria Yotzok and Annika Lorenz have gained, and they're passing. Yeah, they're easily passing Leonie Meyer. Bad move for them to head out to the left side, and quite a solid lead now for Victoria and Annika, who are loving these conditions, I bet, and they're doing the classic tack on top of their opponents now, covering them, and they're fast, I'm sure. They're a light team, they love these conditions, and at the moment they're hot contenders for this one spot to make it to the finals.
That was a big moment at the bottom mark for the second of the German team, so Victoria Yotzok leading from Leonie Meyer.
The key battle here is for Victoria Yotzok is with the British boat that's now up into third or fourth place. Frances Peters and Nicola Groves in the middle of the screen, listed as third on the analytics. So this is very critical for Victoria Yotzok and Annika Lorenz, because the most likely battle for this final golden ticket into the 9-race final later on this afternoon is likely to be between the German boat in the lead and the British boat currently in third place in this race.
As we look at the leaders, Victoria Yotzok, good comeback, Marcus, from a nasty injury. We had a little bit of a chat to her this morning, and it's still a very swollen ankle, a little bit of a flesh wound. So this is a good comeback and good focus by Victoria Yotzok if she can come back and take this one out. They're on the final leg now, on the run to the finish. Up go their Blacks Jenica.
It's not over yet for Leonie Meyer. They can, if they put in a good downwind, they can still pass them. They're not going for a jibe set. They're going for a straight set, but they're going low straight away. They want to go low, but they're no good acceleration right after the jibe. After the set, but they're going a little bit lower. They'll try to jibe on top of Victoria and Annika, but no good speed right now. Jibes coming up from Victoria. Looks like she can pass. No risk on that one. And with the sort of speed these girls have in these conditions, I don't think they can be caught up. The track looks fairly even on the way down, and it looks like they've got good pace in the boat right now.
Marcus, what are your thoughts? They jibed quite early there in the middle of the course, in the middle of the boundaries. They elected not to go across to the other side, giving a little bit of leverage to Leonie Meyer.
I think that was a smart move anyway. You can see how fast they are right now. They're moving with good pace. We see the same pattern as we saw before in the last downwind. There's a little bit more breeze on that right-hand side of our theater here. And that's where they're in. That's where I believe it was Anna Tunnicliffe caught up before. And she's actually catching up again. Leonie Meyer down in third position.
Frances Peters looks like she might be threatening for second place. If she can get up into second place across the finish ahead of the other German boat on the far side, then I think that would move her into pole position for taking this spot into the final. So Victoria Yotzok doing a great job at the front, but also what matters behind her is where the British boat finishes. And the British boat is making a good gain, as it looks at the moment, down this final leg.
So this cross coming up, it looks like Victoria Yotzok will take this one. She's done her final jibe. It's the next cross coming up, Andy, that's crucial, with the blue spinnaker coming across on starboard, the black spinnaker of the German boat coming up. It could be match point here.
Could be. This is a critical port starboard crossing here. It looks like the Germans might just get ahead. Here we see them come into picture. There's the Victoria Yotzok and Annika Lorenz winning that race, doing all they can to secure their spot, but they'll be looking over their shoulder to see what happens now.
Well, we're coming down to a bit of a photo finish here. The black spinnaker from Leonie Meyer, the blue spinnaker from Peters.
So who was ahead? Second and third. It does look like Leonie Meyer was still second. That's what the analytics say.
So we need to confirm that first to find out who has taken that spot, because I think it's very close between Herzog and Peters, between the German boat and the British boat, but it's the other German boat that might have proved to make the difference. Has Leonie Meyer and Maren Holbrook, has their finish been sufficient to keep Francis Peters out of that final?
It was really close. It was a photo finish. Let's check if we could get a replay of the finish. I can try to get that in the 3D graphics.
So the remainder of the field coming through now. But the winner, Victoria Herzog, won that one from, I think, from our eye here, our vantage point. Leonie Meyer, Francis Peters third. We are just working on the analytics to bring up.
So let's go to 3D graphics, and this is the finish, and you can see Leonie Meyer in the background crossing the finishing line first, and then it's Anna Tunnicliffe and Molly Vandermoor.
So we're waiting for confirmation on the points there, but I think that might just give it to the German boat that won that race, Victoria Herzog and Annika Lorenz.
Jury team, this is race committee.
Well, that's the first stadium race I've seen, and I must say I'm very impressed in terms of a spectacle. Close to the shore, you're restricted by the boundary marks. Short track, it certainly is tailor-made for the big crowd out here sitting on the seawall. Andy, it's pretty impressive stuff. Just a bit of a shame we haven't got a little bit more wind.
Yeah, it would be a much more of a boat handling contest. Boat handling was still critical in that race, but positioning was extremely critical off the start line, and how you came off the start and into your first maneuver. I thought the Danish girls on the far side, on the pin end of the line, were going to do well, the way they shot out of the line. They were the first attack, but then they had to duck a number of boats. So the tactics are quite different. And one of the things, I suppose, that we see across the course of this European Championship is you start off with a big fleet, and you start off with big courses. And then throughout the course of the week, you reduce the number of competitors, and you bring in the course size. So it tests your big course sailing skills and your big fleet sailing skills. And then gradually you come down to smaller and smaller courses and fewer competitors. So slightly different skills tested throughout the week.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really good mix in conditions, and the format adds to that. It just makes it more challenging. We had strong winds offshore, we had light offshore strong winds and light winds onshore, more stable conditions, and a really good mix, and I think it makes sailing even more interesting. We used to train these small courses years ago, and we never imagined that it could become an actual race format, and now we see that it's actually really exciting to watch these short courses, and a lot of sailors love it. It's more intense sailing, really.
It certainly is intense. And now, just talking about the course, for my eye, it looked like the right-hand side might have had more pressure, but that wasn't the case. The boat that won, Victoria Herzog, came across on the second one we beat to the shore side. Marcus picked it up first, got in a lane, and that was the deal. So she set herself up on that first bottom mark rounding through the gate. She came across to the right-hand side and took full advantage, and that lead change there was the game breaker.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it just seemed that they were a little bit higher on the right-hand side, and of course the added benefit is on the crosses on the right-hand side. You have the benefit of starboard. Then again, you're tacking so often that it's about setting yourself up for having the rights against your nearest competitor when it matters most, which is up near the top of the course.
So, Marcus, there's almost a little bit of match racing strategy. If you're in the right, you have the rights in terms of that first cross after that bottom mark, and that was quite crucial.
Yeah, absolutely, and they did a great job playing that right-hand side. It's interesting. It's a really small track, but there is differences that you need to play. It was quite pronounced, actually, that the right-hand side of the course had more breeze all throughout, and I don't think it's going to stay like that. It's going to shift back and forth a little bit, but there's definitely enough in it to make it an interesting race.
Well, we really noticed that yesterday, didn't we, Andy, when the the right-hand side was favoured, but every now and again there was a little bit something special on the left that you know it was if you wanted to take a risk, there was something in that right in the right for you.
The course is quite a bit smaller than yesterday, Peter, and yet, as you say, picking the right side still seems quite critical.
Now, just a bit of a correction here. We went into this thinking that the women's petite final would be one race, but in fact, Marcus, I'm now hearing from the water that they're confident enough of the breeze that they're going to go to a 3-race petite final. So that's good news for the sailors. It's not so much of a roll the dice, take your chance, and winner takes all. So 3 races, the best crew will surely get the opportunity to go through to the main final.
Maybe a little bit of bad news for Victoria Jotzog and Annika Lawrence, who just looked like they were making the final. They have to be on their toes again and battle. We can have a look at the current results after that one race, and that is Victoria Jotzog on 125 points, tied on points with Frances Peters and Jule Görger and Lotta Görger in 3rd place, and Leonie Meyer and Maren Hallburg in 4th. So we're in for 3 more races, and let's see how things are evolving.
It's all tied up in the lead with Victoria Jotzog and Frances Peters, and the reward if you win, Andy, is it's pretty interesting. You get the invite to go and play in the main final, and probably, I don't know if you can win the main final, but we're just getting race management talking to us, 20 seconds to their signal. But that's a big carrot, isn't it, if you can get into the main game?
It is. So if you do get through, whichever boat it is of these in this Petit Final, will go through into the final later on this afternoon with equal points to the last boat in the top 8. So still very difficult for whoever goes through to actually win the overall championship. But as you know, Marcus, working with Sailing Team Germany, where you finish in these major championships like World and European Championships has quite an effect on funding opportunities and sponsorship opportunities. So that there's probably money at stake and people's futures at stake, depending on whether they can break through into the final 9-boat final.
Yeah, actually, top 8 is a criteria. It's a cut, and if you can be top 9 and then get a chance to climb up to top 7, it's still a big deal. Even though you can't win a medal, it still matters a lot to the sailors out there.
And interesting to see that from a German perspective in that first race, 3 of the 4 top boats were German boats. Do you think they're familiar with these kind of conditions and this kind of racing? Have they been practicing it as a group?
Well, Victoria and Annika, they certainly stood out as a great light wind team so far, and the others are more all-roundish, but not as consistent as Victoria and Annika, and Tina Lutz and Susanne Boyko, who are in the final. But certainly a strong fleet in the 49er FX, also thanks to Max Groy, the coach who's built up that team. They work together really well, and as a team as a whole. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see who can qualify.
We had the 3-minute signal. I think we must be around 1.5 minutes to go. Might be less than that as I look at the boats lining up on the line. Certainly crucial. So it's all tied up after so much racing, Andy, over all this time. 2 boats tied up for the petite final with Victoria Jotzog, Frances Peters. I think that was the last minute there, the 1-minute signal. As we look at the race management team, they're going to be busy day. Now, there's the race clock, 46 seconds to go. And
that's a fast turnaround, isn't it?
It's good though, and it's good for us being able to see the race clock on the committee boat as that counts down. I've got a lot to play for. To me, it's starting to look like it will be between Jotzog and Peters. They seem to have a bit of a step out on 125 points, going back to the York sisters on 141. So we'll just monitor this carefully.
These are double point counting races as well, though, so those points gaps are less significant than normally they would appear.
Well, it can certainly jump around when you're double points.
And
it's coming up to it, Andy.
Coming up to acceleration, and we hear two signals. So there's an individual recall. Somebody was over. Who was it? One of the leading contenders, maybe. Let's see. Let's see who goes back.
We're just we've heard the general recall.
It's a German boat, and it looks to me like Victoria Yurtzok has gone back. So the boat that's currently leading this Petit Final has to go back, as does one of the Spanish boats. There's Annie Tunnicliffe. Nice start. Going out to the right-hand side. There's Francis Peters. Now, these are great moments for Francis Peters to take advantage of Yurtzok's mistake.
We're just hearing from race radio. 989 hasn't returned, and that is Maria Cantaro from Spain. So that really doesn't affect our points, but certainly Victoria Yurtzok going back. Marcus, was that an unforced error?
I can't tell really. We can go into the replay in a minute and see what happened there. But of course not a good start of that race for them. At the moment it's happening on the left-hand side of the course. We can go into the graphics and zoom in a little bit, and we can see that, can we go to the graphics? And we can see that the boundaries are not quite correct here on the left-hand side. Boats are crossing that boundary. Of course, they can't do that, but it definitely, in reality, they didn't cross the boundary. And it's the British team, Kate McGregor and Mary Rook, on the left-hand side,
And
in
so
the
that's
lead
very
at the
different.
moment.
It's very different to the previous race, isn't it? We were just praising the right in the previous race and saying how we thought the right was the way to go. This time it looks like there's more breeze on the left, and that's what's playing into the hands of Kate McGregor and Mary Rook, the other British team in this Petit Final.
Interesting position of Jule and Lotta Gerger on the right-hand side of the course. They're coming in here now. They're in the picture, and they'll tack in a second. They
Lovely
look
smooth
composed.
maneuver.
Could have pumped that boat a little bit more, maybe. But they're in a good position. Not sure if they can lay the mark yet. I think they can. And it looks like they can possibly cross. Yes, they can.
Marcus, I'll just jump on. There's a media call coming here from the umpires, so we might listen in.
Media. Spain was penalised on the start line for not keeping clear as the windward boat.
Want to explain that?
They had to take a penalty because for a rule infringement, and I think they've taken it. They're far behind now. Second last boat, Victoria Yurtzok and Annika Lorenz, who just had a great race win, now back down in second last position. Let's see how they can catch up, but currently they're not in a good breeze at all. And they're going way too far. It looks like they have to head out way too far on that left-hand side. Solid lead at the moment for the Gerger sisters, who are going downwind.
There we see the Gerger sisters on the left-hand side. They've already jibed, and it looks like they're beginning to stretch away from the opposition behind. It's Leonie Meyer and Maren Holbrook who are in second place, jibing there. And Kate McGregor and Mary Rook also doing very well in the top three in this race so far. Looks like there's going to be a breakaway for the Gerger sisters.
Yep.
So
and here
in
we
the
can
centre of the screen, and we're looking at boat 810. That's the Gerger sisters. Solid lead.
We can see the theatre. That's the white lines left and right. That's the boundaries. Boats are not allowed to head out of that boundary. Gerger sisters closing in onto the boundary, looking really good right now. We can see
looking from our
gate
commentary position,
in the lower position.
It looks soft for the Gerger sisters, but they are staying ahead of Tunnicliffe. Tunnicliffe again choosing the near side, shore side of the course with the red Jenica. But as both of those boats jibe, they look vulnerable on starboard. They do have rights, but it looks like the Gerger sisters there in picture will still get to the bottom, but there are two British boats making a strong charge on port tack, and here we see them. Frances Peters on the right-hand side, Kate McGregor on the left. Not exactly speeding along in these conditions, but looking a little bit faster on port jibe.
Well, when we look at the two GBR boats, it's Kate McGregor that is closest to the bottom mark gate. Frances Peters jibes, and Kate McGregor was right on the ley line coming round looking down the course, the left-hand gate, heading back towards the shore side and followed round the same marker by Frances Peters.
Here we have Kate McGregor and Mary Rook coming towards the camera. First out to the right-hand side, you can see in the background the German boat, the Gerger sisters, currently leading this race. Perhaps McGregor and Rook moving into the lead. We'll have to see when the boats converge further back up the course.
Again, we have this situation where the right-hand side looks quite good. Quite a big split between first and second boat. Gerger's still looking good. They'll have to tack in a second. They're closing into the boundary there. If we go to top view on 3D graphics, we can see they still have a slight lead with the advantage line, but they have to tack in a second.
So
and
important
cross over, then it's payday or not.
So important, Marcus, to get a lane, isn't it, off this bottom mark with it being so compressed.
Yeah, the sideline, the right-hand sideline was really close to the leeward gate. So Anna Tunnicliffe had to tack.
So
No,
lead
sorry,
change.
Kate McGregor had to tack really early, but it does look like she can pass now. Again, the right-hand side has paid. Maybe a risky move by Jule and Lotta Gerger.
Well, when you're first to round, you don't know where your opposition are going to round behind you. So I suppose that's one of the disadvantages, Marcus, of going round in the lead in this short racing, is you don't know what the others are going to do.
Yeah, but maybe they could have tacked a little earlier, but then they would have sailed straight into the spinnakers. I like to go for the simple move. I call it going in circles, where you actually don't do that extra jibe to go around the left-hand gate mark, but you actually just continue, take the right-hand gate mark, and avoid extra maneuvers. And maybe the leader should have gone for that simple course. Actually, now this is the Gergers in third place, down in third place, and for the overall standings at the moment, it would mean that Frances Peters would qualify for the finals. There's one more race to go. As it looks now, and Victoria Jurzok's currently second last, but overall still second.
But this is a good jump out in points for Frances Peters, just tacking there on the left-hand side when the Germans tacked Frances Peters and Nicola Groves tacked.
Heading up towards the top mark for the second and final time. It is McGregor in the lead. Picking up that ley line short lately, you certainly don't want to be doing two tacks. If the defending boat, which in this case here, 810, the Jorger sisters, they've passed Peters at the top end of the course, or maybe not. Are they going to wriggle round the front? Peters very tight on the ley line, squeezing round the mark. That'll slow them up. It will make the exit from the mark a little bit slow.
And you've got to remember on the 49er, you've got a tiller extension sticking out the leeward side of the boat, and you have to make sure that tiller extension doesn't strike the orange mark as you go around. So you have to give it a bit more space than you think, just to make sure that tiller doesn't hit, because that would result in a penalty 360 turn for any boat that did that. Anyway,
we should acknowledge Victoria Jurzok catching up to sixth place. Good news for her, and for the overall, it means she's closing in again onto the lead. Well, actually, Frances Peters is looking really good at the moment. But
that is a good gain for Jurzok, because with these double points, every place counts for a 2-point gain. And as they stand, Jurzok and Lorenz are only 6 points behind Frances Peters and Nicola Groves if the positions were to stay.
It's actually shrunken down to 4 points now. They keep catching up. They're in fifth place right now.
So this is an amazing comeback for a team that were over the line early and had to go back to restart, and it suggests that Jurzok and Lorenz, if they can keep their nose clean and just sail smooth and sail smart without getting into trouble, without crossing the start line too early. They do seem to be the fastest boat out here.
Coming down towards the finish, we're in the lead. Here's the boat coming through. McGregor goes through for a win, but they're back in the standings a little bit. But then we look at the trailing boats.
Second place for Jule Görge and Lotta Görge. Crossing the finishing line now. Finish line is between the orange flag in the foreground and the orange flag on that rib in the background. Third place for Francis Peters, current leader in this Petit Final series with one more race to go.
And it looks like
there's the Danish boat, the sisters just coming in there. They should just get in ahead of this German boat crossing, which is Victoria Jurzok. Now that was very close, and did they beat the Danes or did they come just behind the Danes? That little moment there, things like that could make the difference.
very valuable points are up for grabs.
It looks like Jurzok might have got 5th in that race just behind the Danes. They might nearly have got 4th place if they'd have just got ahead of the Danes there, and those would have been 2 extra points. But even so, I think that's an incredible comeback for Jurzok. Very impressive.
So that concludes the second race of the Petite Final.
Interesting to look at the average speeds of that race. Victoria Jurzok was the fastest boat with 6.52 knots. And she also went a really short distance overall, but she had to go that little bit of distance in the wrong direction in the beginning, so that was costly. But from the mere facts, she sailed a great race for sure.
So even though she did the extra distance back to the start line, then she still did the shortest distance. Can you give us those distances, Marcus? It looks like it's what, 1,948 meters that Jurzok completed in that race. And
second place boat had 2,000.
No, I think actually looking at it, they were about. There were others that did fewer meters, so they weren't the shortest, but they were, as you say, Marcus, the fastest. 6.52 average speed.
Okay, guys, let's go out to Ben on the water. He's talking to the race winner.
We're here on the water with Kate McGregor and Mary Rook. Kate, tell us, what was the key to that victory?
It's really tough out there. If you can get your nose out off the start, then I think that helps. It's really hard to fight back through the pack like we had in the first race. So, yeah, just keeping clear air, looking for the pressure is really patchy. So try not to pick too much weed up as well. There's quite a lot of weed around. But yeah, just looking for pressure really.
And Mary, it's a physical test. How are you dealing with it today?
Not too physical today, but just got to do things fast and then stop.
Okay, well, good luck the rest of the way.
Thank you.
Back to you guys in the studio.
And so Kate McGregor and Mary Rook. Well, that was certainly a good victory for them in that one. And it's just great to go out on the water for those little interviews, isn't it? Here, as soon as I've crossed the line, bang, we have the little interview. Good work by Ben out there, Marcus.
One more race to go.
Now, I've got a question for you. If you're the German coach of your German team, Victoria Jurzok, what are you saying? She's fast. She's got to get off the line and get free. She's fast enough to take this out. But what's you've got to keep it simple, don't you? You can't.
You
get
have
too
to keep it simple. But if there's a time to be aggressive, then that's now, because it's all or nothing. They have to, I think, be 3 spots or 4 spots ahead of that second place boat, and it's no time for conservative sailing.
But Marcus, having said that, they did restart. They started at the back and they still got back to 5th place. Do you not think that if they'd have just got an average start, maybe not the best start, they've got the speed to take one of these races out?
Yeah, of course they do. But they got to go for a win now, and they can't play around with the other team. They have to hope that they are having a bad race, and they themselves should be sailing the best race they can. So even at the start, they should go for the best start and then play their speed and hope that Francis Peters is getting stuck somewhere, and that's the only chance they have. They have to go for their best race.
Well, it's 4 points in the deal.
Yeah.
Isn't there? Well, there we go from out on the water. We're down to race number 3 from the petite final. And Andy, this really, it's winner takes all. So York Sock needs to win by 2 places to take this one out. Peters just really needs, she doesn't have to beat York Sock, but she really cannot afford to be further back than 2 spots.
And more than our observations, where you can see that York Sock is the fastest boat out there, they will be feeling that as well. But I think they will just be aiming to sail their own race.
And realistically, under that, I mean, we go back 10 points. I think it's a 2-boat deal, isn't it, for this last race? It would take something pretty radical to lose 10 points. So it's 5 places. Or it's even more than that.
I wouldn't count the Goga sisters out. I still think they could do it.
So there's more in the game. You're thinking, as an outsider, watch out for the Goga sisters. They need to win, for sure. And then
funny things can happen on these short courses, and there is a lot of stakes, so there'll be a lot of tension out there. And will the girls out there be able to maintain the kind of form that they have under this kind of pressure? Some people rise to it, and some people are affected by it.
So you're saying if Peters and York Sock really engage in match racing, watch out for the Goga sisters.
It's possible, isn't it? It really is possible.
Mathematically, it is.
Yeah.
I personally think the winner of this is going to be, Germany against GBR. Fascinating stuff.
And well, also there.
So we can put our bets down, Andy.
I'll take your.
You can be the referee.
I'd gladly take both your money, actually.
Now you don't need to worry because you've already got your top Kiwi boat in the final later on this afternoon.
Well, I'm sure you'll be coming at me thick and fast. Both of you are on that one, but that's something to look forward to. So we're down now to the last race, race 3 of the petite final for FX for Women, European Championships here in Aarhus. Beautiful weather, big crowd sitting down here on the breakwater. And another highlight has been the start of the tall ships here this morning. They set off, and I understand there were 500,000 people down on the dock yesterday to look at those boats.
Bearing in mind that there's only 300,000 people who actually live in Aarhus, in the second city of Denmark, 500,000 is an awful lot of people. So some of those will be the residents of Aarhus, but it's bringing in crowds from across Europe to visit the tall ships and also to visit the 49er European Championships.
Real sailing city here in Aarhus, and beautiful conditions today. A little bit on the light side. It's around now, I don't know, 4 or 5 knots, but these boats are so powered up. We're coming up to 150 to go. Prediction time, boys. Okay.
Well, we can look at the facts. We can just we can just look at the tracking and see where boats are bunching up. Let's go to the 3D tracking and see where the boats are. Francis Peters is on the left side of the starting line, whilst Jortsok and Gerge are lingering and waiting on the right-hand side of the starting line. Francis Peters wants to go for a clean lane, it seems. And
or will she be going for the port tack start underneath the fleet? Maybe,
possible. She doesn't have a far way to go, but that was the side that was favored. It even looks like she wants to go on the pin end side at the moment. You keep an eye on that.
We
Let's
haven't
look at
seen
the clock. It's 1 minute and 7 to go.
I don't think the pin has worked terribly well for people that have tried it because you have such a short distance to the boundary. There's the drone. Going to get some great overhead shots from the drone helicopter during today. And there is the view from the drone.
Well,
and you can see Victoria Yurtsok about 3 boats down from the committee boat. So a middle of the line start being planned by Victoria Yurtsok. Francis Peters at the extreme end of the line.
Interesting that Peters is still on port tack, just stalled, not fouling out by any means, but Peters really a bit jammed up, still on port with only 20 seconds to go.
Well, it looks like Francis Peters is going for the port tack start. She's going to start behind her rivals. She is effectively going to start this race in last place, but it's not about where you cross the start line, it's about the finish.
She might have good pace on, but the boat most windward has to clear the lane and let her pass. And she's got 1 tack last. Interesting, really interesting setup here. Francis Peters, 1 tack last. She goes behind. And Jotsok and Lawrence, third boat from the starting vessel, currently in the middle of the picture. And we see Francis Peter heading out to the right-hand side. Really interesting and smart move by her. I think it's going to pay off.
Is that a mistake, or is it a smart move that looking up the course she wanted the right so much that she was prepared to sail behind the fleet off the line?
Well, it's difficult to tell. She couldn't go far. She's tacking now on the right-hand side, close to the sideline.
Certainly.
So it's the Danish on the far side, again, have chosen to get the pin. They got the pin. They've gone up to the left, and they were early leaders in this race. But then when they get to that boundary, what are they going to be able to do with that early advantage? It's not about winning the start, unless the start puts you in a position to be leading later on up this first leg.
A little bit too early to judge, but from the top view, we can see that Francis Peters is doing well on the right-hand side. She is currently in the theoretical lead. Yeah, and it does look like she's in the breeze again.
Nice
the right-hand
pressure.
side
Nice
looks good.
pressure on the right.
So she started last, and already she's vying for the lead in this race after a very, very short time.
But that's because she's got one tack less. That's the beauty about the port start, that you have one tack less. And good tactics on her.
So she was prepared to take a bit of pain for a huge gain on that right-hand side, guys, and you've got to believe that was a tactic that would have been sorted out pre-start. That's impressive, Andy.
What's even nicer for the British team is that the boat just to leeward, which is now tacking in picture, is their main rival. So that's Victoria Herzog, just coming into picture there on the right-hand side beneath the Union Jack. So if she wanted to engage in a match race, Francis Peters could do that, and looking at where she's tacking, that's an aggressive place for the British to tack on their closest German rivals. So it looks like it's playing into the hands of Francis Peters and Nicola Groves, the way that this is panning out. So their risky start of starting last is already paying off for them.
But was it risky or a strategy? That's what I'm trying to push you for. What do you think?
It was a strategy. And actually, when you think about it, maybe there is greater risk in actually coming off the line with the bulk of the fleet, because you've got to get a really good start. Francis Peters doesn't have to be so accurate with her starting, and yet she's rewarded with clear air very early on.
That's Leonie Meyer in the picture right now, closing into the boundary, closing into our camera boat here. They can't go any further there. Herzog did a nice beat over to the right-hand side. You can see her pace. She is a little bit faster. She's still very close, but she would definitely need to overtake the leading boat in order to make a difference, in order to have a chance to still win this final.
Well, it's more than that, isn't it? She has to
put boats between.
Boats between her. So right now, at the first mark, in this repechage for the Petit Final, the winning team will go through. At Mark 1, it will be Francis Peters, who has that trump card, but look out, I'm sure, for a challenge from the German boat, 712 Victoria Herzog.
Going to top view, we can see that Victoria Herzog has done a low set, but Francis Peters has already jibed back. So she did manage to jibe and get free, and she jibed early. That's what we've seen before. Boats get more breeze on the right-hand side here. It's not so good to be on the other side. I haven't quite figured out why, but
it does seem like there's more breeze once you get it. The boats seem faster on port jibe on this side of the course, and it is the making jibe as well. There's a lot more port in this course than there is starboard. So Francis Peters is now on the making jibe towards the bottom marks. We can't see the bottom marks yet, but when they come into picture, it looks like there's a little bit of bias in them as well. It looks like the left-hand mark looking upwind.
Look at the boat speeds here. Peters is way, way faster than a Herzog. What's that? 2 knots faster. Put that down to a bit more pressure over the on the left-hand side as we look down towards the bottom mark gate.
She is currently a knot faster. It's evening out now. But you can see the speed differences of the boats who are closer to the shore. They just have more pace on.
That's a late jibe there, which suggests to me that she's going to go for the jibe drop around this near side mark that we're looking at here. So she fancies going round towards the right-hand side.
Oh, and an expensive rounding, I think, for Victoria and Annika on the other side, on the left-hand side. And we haven't seen that side pay, really.
Well, they were really pushed away, weren't they? They came in, they'd done very well late. I'm talking about Yorksock at the bottom. But as soon as Peters decided she wanted the, looking down the course, the left-hand mark, really, I guess she didn't want to follow in Yorksock, so she took the other mark. Now heading up towards the top mark again. But as we speak here now, the boat that will go through to the, at Mark 2, go through to the main final will be Francis Peters.
And here we have our two leading boats. In the background, we see Victoria Yotzok. In the foreground, we saw Francis Peters. Victoria Yotzok on the far end side. We now see her at the right side of the screen.
It doesn't look too bad for the Germans from this angle, does it, Marcus? It may not be telling us the true story.
Well,
but
we can look from on top. And they are definitely close, but I do believe Francis Peters is ahead. And looking from on top, we can also see that the angles are slightly diverging. It does look like Francis Peters is going a little bit higher than Victoria Yotzok. They're getting close to the boundary now. In the 3D graphic, they've actually crossed it. They haven't done so in reality. It's probably laying in a jagged line and not quite straight.
Coming up to the critical moment here, if the British can still cross the Germans, then they will be able to tack in front of the Germans and give them bad air out over to this side of the course, the right-hand side of the course, bottom of picture. So here we are, will Francis Peters tack on the Germans?
Oh, big
Bad
wave
waves.
there. See the
Bad
waves.
waves.
And the leading boat took those bow on. We can see how deep Yorksock is. But it's quite a difference in the track, eh? The right-hand side is so favourable.
I think Francis Peters delayed her tack there. She wanted to tack sooner, but she couldn't because of that wave, those set of waves that came through. It's really slow to tack the boat when you're slamming through waves. So she waited a little bit longer than she wanted to. And that has given Victoria Yotzok just a chink of hope that she might be able to accelerate through and start attacking Francis Peters.
Certainly they're going to be close at the top mark. They're coming up to the ley line.
Course is slightly converging again. Francis Peters going a little bit lower than Victoria Yotzok, but she is in a very good position. I mean, she's got some points on her. There would need to be boats in between them. It's going to be very, very difficult on this downwind to change her fate.
Yes.
Almost only a rule situation could break that race.
These two are clearly the class act in this fleet. They've jumped out from the rest, and this is not good news for Victoria Yotzok because she needs, for example, that German boat 777 to jump in, but to get ahead and to get boats in front of Francis Peters. But it doesn't look like Francis Peters is going to be caught in this race.
And in many ways, you've got to say, you know, Francis Peters, 3 races, very few errors. The big error for me from Yorksock is being over the line in race 2. It's cost a possible place into the medal race. But you learn from that. That's how you learn. When you're so young and fresh, I'm sure they will review and debrief, come back stronger. But it's Francis Peters.
With the benefit of hindsight, if Victoria knew she was as fast as she has been today, maybe she would have been more conservative on the start, but that's speaking with the benefit of hindsight.
Looking at Francis Peters here now, she's in the lead. It doesn't look like anything's going to happen there. I believe that's it. And I must say, I love the format. It's so clear cut. There's direct judging on the water. There's no protests after the finish. Only, I think, for 2 minutes they can file a protest. So it looks like when they cross the finish line, that's going to be our Petit Final winner. That's going to make it to the final that we're going to see right after.
Still sailing the boat really hard all the way across to the finish. Francis Peters jumping out on her trapeze handle, bringing the boat back down with some power, using what little weight she has to actually get the boat flat again.
And here's the finish from the drone. Nice work. I'm sure these girls are happy. And let's see if Ben Ramoka can talk to them right after the finish.
So there goes Victoria Yotzok. Very good finish there for her, 2nd place. But on this occasion, just not good enough to get through to the next round, the final of the competition.
But apart from that 2nd race, good racing, good work on them too.
Very good.
For sure, and I think the difference between the crew, for me, it was that being on the course side of the line in race 2 for the young German combination, Victoria Yotzok. But we do have our team that will go through to the main final. That'll be Francis Peters, Nicola Groves. And we're just hoping, we're working here, that Ben Ramoka out on the water will get an interview for us. I'm sure he'll come to us very quickly.
Just
yeah,
coming
I
back
like
to
the
that
style. I like the style of racing. I think it's very clear. It's brutal, but it's very good. Here's the leaderboard, Marcus.
Yep, we've got a clear lead for Francis Peters and Victoria Jotzog, and actually the score was much broader than we thought. We've got differences in the scoreboard, I believe. It's a little bit mixed up. There's double points, you have to remember. Double points in this medal race, and Victoria Jotzog in second place, Jule Gerger in third, Leonie Meyer and Maren Holbrook in fourth, Kate McGregor and Mary Vandermoor in fifth.
What struck me about that was the start that Francis Peters and Nicola Groves chose. We spoke about it earlier, and they started on port tack, which is a very safe start because you know you're not going to be over the line. And as soon as you get past the last of your opposition, starting by the committee boat, you're straight into clear air. There's only one other boat on the course that has that kind of clear air, and that's the boat on the far side who started at the pin, which typically was the Danish Schutter sisters, but they didn't manage to make of that much of that early advantage. So starting from 8th and last, or 9th and last, they soon got up into first place.
Well, you take a bit of pain for a big gain, don't you? They had a strategy, and the strategy was to dip the fleet and get the lane on the, looking up the course on the right-hand side, so it was clear. And from there, it was Francis Peters who went ahead to win the race and to take out the petite women's final. And as a bonus, she goes through to the medal races. The medal race for the FX will be 3 races, as we've just had, and we'll have double points. We're just going to go out onto the water now to get a reaction from our race winners with Ben Ramoka.
Okay. We're here with race winners and series winners, Francis Peters and Nicola Groves. What was the key to that round, and how did you take it?
Really, really hard. We found that starting on port behind the fleet worked pretty well for us, because with the lanes either side, it meant that you actually have to do less tacks than other boats on the course, and tacking in this amount of wind is pretty slow. But otherwise, it's just try and keep your air clear, head out and look for the next pressure, and just try and not make any stupid mistakes.
And keeping calm. Very calm. Yeah. If anything goes bad, just keep calm and it will come back again, hopefully.
Nicola, you're going to have to do 3 more races here. How do you feel about that?
Fine. All over it.
Great. Good luck to you guys in the next round.
Thank you so much.
Back to you guys in the studio.
Pretty happy to be going through. It's a big bonus for them, isn't it? You know, we were talking to them this morning, and they had some interesting insights, didn't they, into the point scoring system, Andy. They were a little bit, they're happy to take it, but they felt that the advantage you get from coming through via the repechage might be a little bit skewed. What did you think?
They felt a bit guilty about the idea of being let back into the final,
main game,
and being put on the same points as the boat that qualified in 8th place, which is how it works. They feel like they've sort of cheated their way back into the system, and we were trying to reassure them that they shouldn't feel so bad about themselves.
I think it's okay.
I think it's okay. It's like rowing.
Yeah.
You know, one of my other sports that I love following is rowing. And if you're in the repechage and you go through and you beat someone that beat you in the round robin stage of the repechage and row, it's the same as this, isn't it? I think it's fine.
And match racing as well. You can sail a great qualifying series in match racing in a round robin, and then when you go through to the knockout stages of a quarter-final, semi-final, final, what you did in those early races, it doesn't matter. Everything goes back to 0. And that's tough.
But that's not what's the case here, actually, because it doesn't go back to 0.
No.
It's just between these 2 boats in 8th spot. And you got to give them some points. Which are you going to give them? 8 plus 1? Well, that would be arbitrary as well. So you tie them on points, and the battle is up for the final. And the boats who sailed really well before the final, they do have their point gaps that they can build on.
What about the other thing that we were talking about this earlier between the 2 of us, the fact that you've just done some hard races and now you've got to go straight into more hard races, but it's not physically that testing today. I wonder if that's going to be an advantage for the British girls that have just got through into the final, that they've already got some measure of the race course.
I agree. No, I think in this condition, physically, it's a mental game at the moment. It's not a physical game. And also, they have obviously sorted out with their coach this racetrack. We saw that by that port, starting on port. They love coming to this right-hand side. So I think it's an advantage that they've done 3 races on this track. I don't think there's a physical issue. They'll be feeling good about themselves. They're fast enough. So one of the things to look out for, how far up the main fleet can they jump?
That will be interesting. I will also be interested to see if there are others trying to book their slot for that port tack start, because it's all well and good being the only ones that do it. Because when you're the only ones that do it, you're unchallenged, and that's what we saw. They were able to put their boat exactly where they wanted, but there will have been other girls watching from the sidelines for the next stage of racing, thinking, "Ooh, that worked pretty well."
And then it gets messy.
Then it gets messy, so that the port tack start may not work as well in some of these races because that advantage will have been spotted by others.
Well, what we saw at the theater-style finals in Kiel and also last year at the Europeans was that the fleet likes to split really in 2 parts. 4 boats go out that way, 4 boats go out the other way. This time around we will have 9 boats in the final, 1 that made it from the Petit Final. Maybe 4 and 5. It's going to be curious to see how the fleet's going to split. I was surprised to see 7 out of 8 boats now heading out to one side. The pattern last year was more clear. The fleet split.
Why do you think that came about on this course?
Well, if you do the port start, you do 1 tack less, and on this small course, that does make a big difference. So a lot of people like to go for that move. But we found the European champion last year. He went out straight. He didn't do the port tack option once, I believe, and he just went for a really clean, fast start, headed out to the sideline on the left-hand side, which was the long leg very often, and that was more important than avoiding that 1 extra tack.
Now, in longer course racing, often a strategy can be to do the long board first. Is that so relevant, do you think, on these really compressed courses?
Yeah, I think so. You want to break away from the start, and you can do that more easily if you go on the long leg first. If the long leg is the starboard leg, when you do starboard start, downside is when you tack, the other boats that have gone the other way have right of way. If the long tack is the one that you get out of the port start, then I think that is the way to go. That's the favorable tack for sure.
So
but that's not what we saw just now. It did look like the longer tack was the one straight out of the start with the starboard start.
But it was the boats, in the case of Francis Peters, that got over to the right before they did so they did a short port, then a long starboard, but first cross, of course, starboard advantage. Quite strategic.
Very strategic, but we're already getting into the nitty-gritty of this. It's going to be a little bit more of a drag race as well. You got to be fast, you got to start well, and it's not that complicated, I believe, and I'm really curious to see how these top girls perform now on that short course.
Well, we're here in Aarhus for the European